Welcome to the OSHA Bloodborne Pathogen Training, updated for 2023. What is a bloodborne pathogen? Many people have heard the words bloodborne pathogen, but they aren't sure what it means. It's just a fancy way of saying germs which live in blood and can make you sick. They can be spread by touching contaminated blood or other bodily fluids. Another term for this is a pathogenic microorganism, but in this we're going to refer to them as germs. What bodily fluids could make me sick? It's not just blood. There are many other bodily fluids which can carry germs that make you sick. They could be semen or vaginal secretions, cerebrospinal fluid, or a bunch of other different fluids, all these ones listed here. Anytime you're working with any of these fluids or any bodily fluid that is visibly contaminated with blood, or any fluid in a situation where it's difficult or impossible to tell the difference between bodily fluids, you should institute the precautions we discuss in this video and understand that there is a potential hazard. So, what types of bloodborne pathogens are there? There are many types of bloodborne pathogens, but the most commonly discussed are HIV, or the human immunodeficiency virus, hepatitis B, and hepatitis C. HIV is the virus that leads to AIDS. HIV is treatable with medication, but it is not curable, and there's no vaccine available. Hepatitis B is an infection that can lead to liver disease and other chronic health issues. Symptoms include a yellowing of the skin and the white parts of the eyes, nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain, and joint pain. It can sometimes be cured, but there isn't a safe and effective vaccine available to prevent hepatitis B, and we're going to talk about that later in this training. Hepatitis C. Hepatitis C is also an infection that can lead to serious liver disease and is usually not curable. The symptoms are the same as for hepatitis B, but there's no vaccine available. So why is this important? Well, before the use of hepatitis B vaccines, there were about 17,000 people infected at work each year with hepatitis B. So 17,000 people a year infected with hepatitis B at work. And in 2018, there were almost 16,000 deaths associated with hepatitis C in the United States. So there's no vaccine for hepatitis C. So remember, almost 16,000 deaths associated with hepatitis C, and there were 41,000 new hepatitis C infections in 2016 in the United States. So this could be a big issue to be concerned about. If you're working around blood or other bodily fluids, this is really important. So due to all this, OSHA instituted the Bloodborne Pathogen Standard in 1991 to protect employees who could be exposed to blood or other potentially infectious materials at work. Requires that your employer have an exposure control plan, provide training, and personal protective equipment to the employees. It's a federal regulation and can be found in the Code of Federal Regulations 1910.1030. So, how do these germs transmit? How do they spread? If your skin is intact, meaning it isn't broken or damaged in any way, you don't have any rashes or cuts or anything like that, then your skin is actually an extremely good barrier against germs. Most people who become infected with bloodborne pathogens either have a cut, or they're cut with something sharp, or they get blood or another potentially infectious material in their eyes, nose, or mouth. If you get blood or other potentially infectious material in your eyes, nose, mouth, or a cut or break in your skin, this is an exposure. If this happens, you should let your employer know immediately and seek medical attention. So, If you were cleaning up blood from someone who is infected with HIV, how would you do that? What precautions would you take to protect yourself? These are the same precautions you will take anytime you're handling blood or any potentially infectious material because you don't know if it is infected with a bloodborne pathogen. This is called universal precautions. Anytime you may contact blood or other bodily fluids, you could be at risk to be infected with a bloodborne pathogen. This is why we use universal precautions to protect ourselves by always treating all blood and other body fluids as infectious. So we make sure whenever we're working around body fluids to limit the use of sharp objects and to always dispose of sharp objects in a puncture resistant sharps disposal container. So here's some sharps disposal containers pictured on the right. And you can take sharp objects like needles and razor blades and place them into these sharps containers for disposal to prevent them from cutting anyone. And if you're coming into contact with blood or other body fluids, you should wear proper personal protective equipment to avoid touching the material. Personal protective equipment could be gloves, safety glasses, gowns, and masks. This will be provided by your employer free of charge. After you remove your gloves or other personal protective equipment, it's very important that you wash your hands if you think you may have contacted blood or another potentially infectious material. Hand washing is essential to preventing the spread of germs, so make sure to wash your hands with soap, hot water, or at a minimum, decontaminate them with an alcohol-based hand sanitizer. Anytime that you're working with blood or other body fluids which could be infected, we need to communicate that and make sure other people know that those materials are present. So it's important that we use this symbol on the right here. This is the universal biohazard symbol, and it is used to communicate that there are blood or other bodily fluids present that could infect people. So make sure to use this symbol on containers of contaminated items such as contaminated laundry or paper towels that were used to clean up blood, or you can also use red bags as an alternative. So red bags can be used to tell people that there is contaminated material in the bag. So another thing we do to protect ourselves is make sure that we have hepatitis B vaccines. The hepatitis B vaccine is available free of charge from your employer. It's considered highly effective and safe, and has been in use since 1982. If you come into contact with bloodborne pathogens, it's important to be vaccinated for hepatitis B. If you would like, if you would not like to receive the vaccine, you'll need to sign a form declining the vaccine for your employer to keep. This form is linked in the description of this training video. Your employer has an exposure control plan that explains how they protect you from bloodborne pathogens at work. This plan covers personal protective equipment, exposure reporting, medical checkups following exposure, and much more. Ask your supervisor if you'd like to see a copy of the plan, and ask your supervisor with any questions regarding bloodborne pathogens.